Hey guys, it's Mrs. Yeagle here again, and I am reading to you Addison Cooke and the Tomb of the Khan. We are on chapter 9 right now, and this is on page 74, so follow along. Chapter 9, Tony the Triad. There are moments in life when it's best to carefully consider one's actions. Choosing a college, choosing a career, choosing whether to throw oneself out the second-story window of a Chinese restaurant. These are all important life decisions and not to be taken lightly. Addison considered himself a very thoughtful and conscientious person. He was as surprised as anyone when he chose to hurtle himself through a plate glass window. As he sailed through the window frame, he was struck by two important realizations. The first was that the window was already open. This could either mean good news or bad news, Addison reflected. In the short term, it was very good news. He wasn't opening a plate glass window with his forehead. But in the long term, the open window might simply be hastening his express trip to the pavement. Addison decided it was a wash. The second realization came quickly on the heels of the first. Addison considered himself a man of hard science and was not quick to believe in signs or miracles. Yet every now and then, when life threw him a bone, it was hard not to ponder the handiwork of some divine providence. Addison, as he spiraled through the empty window, could not help but notice that the Jade Tiger restaurant was furnished with a front awning. It was waiting for him like an old friend. It was red and stretched tight like a fireman's trampoline. He bounced on it. Molly, Eddie, and Raj bounced on it too, in quick succession. They bounced to their feet, jogged a few side steps, and climbed onto the first-story roof of the building next door. Several triads leapt out of the window after them. The triads, to their great misfortune, were full-grown adults and therefore much heavier. They smashed right through the awning and were quickly acquainted with the pavement below. One of them would have to explain to Madame Feng how they had destroyed the awning of her restaurant. More triads spilled out of the window like rats from a sinking ship. These gang members, learning by example, clung to the edge of the roof rather than plummeting through the yawning hole of the awning. Spying Addison's team, they sashayed across the sloping eaves, scattering roof tiles, and chased the New Yorkers across the building tops of Kowloon. Addison checked over his shoulder. "This is the pig's whistle," he said in alarm. He wasn't sure if this was an actual expression, but he liked the way it sounded. "Pick up those feet, Eddie, they're gaining on us." Molly, always the fastest, scrambled up a service ladder onto the three-story roof of a rickety tenement. Raj, Addison, and Eddie scampered after her, ducking linens on clotheslines and scaring up swarms of startled pigeons. The team skidded to a halt at the edge of a three-story roof. They stared down at the traffic below. "Cornered by a street corner," said Addison. Triads, fist-pumping, galloped closer across the rooftops. Raj pointed to the power line stretching from building to building across the intersection. "We'll zip line out of here!" He slipped off his waiter apron and slung it over the wire. "Raj, are you sure you want to try this?" asked Addison, glancing nervously at the three-story drop. "Of course he wants to try this," said Molly, who was pretty well acquainted with Raj by this point. "What about electrocution?" asked Eddie. "I'm only touching one wire. I'm not completing a circuit." Raj pushed off from the roof, gripping the apron in both fists as it slid along the wire. He dangled from the line, gathering speed as he swept high over the intersection. Triads shouted as they drew close, branding guns and knives. "Works for me," said Molly. She stripped off her apron. Addison and even Eddie followed suit. They draped their aprons over the power line and leapt off the edge of the roof. All things being equal, Addison felt pretty good about this decision. Granted, he possessed a healthy fear of heights, but he possessed an even healthier fear of knife-wielding criminals. He watched them slip away behind him as his zipline gathered speed. Cars and buses careened along the street below his flailing feet. Addison was rather bullish about his prospects of reaching the far side of the intersection when he noticed his speed slowing down. The power line was bowing under the weight of 4 people. Their zipline lost its zip. Raj reached the middle of the intersection first and slowed to a halt. Molly slammed into his back, with Addison and Eddie ramming into her with quick succession. "What now?" asked Eddie. Addison was rarely at a loss for words. He usually ran at a surplus. But this particular situation, the kind where one finds oneself dangling over a Kowloon street like a Christmas ornament on a breaking branch, he was unable to dredge even a few useful syllables up from his gullet. He could only stare at the heavy traffic rumbling 10 feet below his wobbling wingtips. Well, "Here we are," he managed. The electric line strained and sagged under its groaning weight. The nearest telephone pole began to tilt like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. "And this seemed like such a good idea," said Raj wistfully. And it really was, all the way up until the line snapped in a shower of sparks. Addison's team plummeted through the air. Addison didn't have long to contemplate life choices before he landed hard in the bed of a passing garbage truck. He groaned, feeling his ribs bruised from the impact. Raj, Molly, and Eddie crashed down beside him, instantly buried in food wrappers, nibbled bread crusts, orange rinds, and used Q-tips. Addison struggled to sit up in the mounds of trash. "Alaric, king of the Viscoffs!" He was pleased to be alive, but not if it meant ruining his best wool slacks. He coughed a few times, which only hurt his ribs. "Let's get out of here," he croaked. "I don't know," said Eddie. "At least we're safe in this truck." The dump truck squeaked to a stop at a row of dumpsters. Its hydraulic arm hoisted a dumpster high in the air and turned its contents south. Addison's team was buried under a fresh mound of garbage. "Okay," said Eddie, clawing a greasy clump of noodles from his hair. "Let's get out of here." They wallowed through heaps of reeking trash and clambered over the iron tailgate of the dump truck. Surprised onlookers watched Addison's team emerge, perhaps wondering why anyone would throw away 4 perfectly decent American kids. Addison shook trash from his clothes. He stood on the crowded Kowloon street and turned in a slow circle. He never thought he would regret climbing out of a garbage truck, but that was his immediate feeling. His ears were split by the roar of motorcycle engines closing in. Peering over the incoming high beams, Addison saw that each bike was piled high with triads. "Here they come!" His ribs aching and stiff, he tried not to take deep breaths. He led the group into a crowded Kowloon night market, weaving between food stalls heaped with shark fins and octopus, ducking past duck dealers in duck trousers hawking mallards dangling from strings. Triads gunned their motorcycle engines, scattering crowds, catching up quickly. Addison scooted under carts laden with pig heads, shortcutted through linen shops billowing with hanging fabrics, and sidestepped through incense shops reeking of scented oils. A tenacious triad throttled his motor, keeping pace behind them. "Raj!" Addison called, yanking a yard of silk from a display hook. "Grab hold!" Raj took the other end and pulled the fabric taut. The surprised triad, punching the gas, was clotheslined off his bike. He hit the ground on his back and lay there stunned and blinking. Addison admired the sleek black racing bike lying toppled over on its side, rear wheel spinning. He marked the roar of other bikes closing in. "Anyone know how to ride a motorcycle?" "I've seen my cousin do it," said Eddie. "Eddie, you are the executive vice president in charge of not driving anything ever." "Can I be president?" Eddie watched anxiously as another triad bike shoved its way closer through the throngs of shoppers. "Addison, there's 4 of us. We can't all ride one motorcycle." "Can't we?" Addison righted the motorcycle. It was surprisingly heavy. He climbed on. The forward pitch of the racing bike forced him low over the handlebars like a jockey on a thoroughbred. "Okay, Eddie, you control the clutch because I have no idea how that works, but I'm steering." Eddie was about to refuse, but the incoming motorcycles were so deafening that he knew his argument would be drowned out. He climbed on behind Addison. Molly leapt onto the back. She was used to sharing a bicycle with Addison and didn't see how this was much different. Raj perched on the front, feet balanced on the fork tube of the wheel. A triad motorcycle burst through a neighboring stall, heading straight for them. "Now!" shouted Addison. Eddie gunned it. The bike took off so fast, Addison felt his eyeballs pushed back inside his head. His first instinct was to shut his eyes, but he quickly discovered he could steer the bike far better with his eyes open. Hollering pedestrians fled from his speeding path. It filled Addison with a strange sense of power that he quite liked. "This isn't so bad," he said over the sound of Eddie's screaming. The trick was to stay one step ahead of the pursuing triads. This became increasingly challenging, what with all the local police brandishing nightsticks and blocking the way. "More gas, Eddie!" Addison shouted, taking a quick shortcut directly through a giant display of watermelons. He wiped juice from his shirt with his pocket handkerchief. He was not looking forward to the hotel's dry cleaning bill. "Addison!" shouted Molly. "Now the police are after us too!" Dun, dun, dun. We are on the middle of page 82 and we have to stop for a short break. See you soon.